evening to everyone. Good evening to everyone. As we hold space together this evening, going to invite you, for those online, we have many people online, many people here, going to invite you to be in the music for a moment. Close your eyes, to feel the community around you, to take a breath, a pause, to turn away from the news for a moment, to hold this sacred space, to hold loving people in our hearts. Let's take a few moments. So happy that all of you could be here with us this evening. A time for coming together, a time for unity, a time for understanding, a complex, painful, unimaginable moment that we face in this hour. Tonight we're here to gain a little more understanding and insight, to feel community, to connect and understand that there is so much that we have to offer in this world. I'm so blessed to be up here with Rabbi Cantor Arlene Bernstein, with Heidi Gentwerk, our incredible congregant soloist, and in this moment, exhausted president and CEO of our federation. And I really thank her for moving all the things around to be here this evening. We're going to begin with Hatikva. I invite you to rise.
Ulfat Yerushalayim.
You may be seated. Just to give you an understanding of how we're going to frame this evening, I'm going to take a few minutes to try to make sense of how we got to where we are. And Heidi is going to continue with an understanding of our relationship with our region and a current update with the Shah HaNegev community, which is on the envelope of the Gaza border. Rabbi Cantor Bernstein is going to share about some individuals and people, loved ones, and experiences that are going on. And then we're going to save the rest of the time for your questions. And you'll have a QR code that will pop up both online and it will pop up on our screens. You'll be able to answer, you'll be able to ask questions. I will receive them up here, and the three of us will take turns we'll each guide a question, a response if we can. And please know that we're not going to be able to answer every question, but we'll do our best. And then we're going to come together at the end with a little more music to end our evening together. So I want to begin by offering an understanding of, and I'm not going through every detail because we would be here for a semester. And that's not our focus tonight. I just want to give you a few minutes of understanding. And mostly it's focused on what Hamas is and how they came to be in the place that they are and some of the challenges. The map that you see in front of you is, or to our left and right, is the map that was given by the League of Nations, now the United Nations in 1948, which is a partition plan. The partition plan enabled there to be an official state of Israel, and next to it, alongside of it, and around it, a state that would be called Palestine that would continue along the British mandate. It was laid out in the Balfour Declaration, but in 1948 it became official. Right after that, as many of you are familiar, war broke out, the War of Independence. War had started the country, and 75 years later, we're still here. Looks different, but at its core, it's the same. And so I want to just give you a little understanding, and maybe a little blurry, and that's okay. I'll tell you what's on the pictures. This is the rise of Hamas began as an Islamic military group in 1987, and its original charters, were to liberate Palestine through violent jihad. And it's carried out scores of different suicide attacks and bombings, as we've known throughout the years, and has claimed responsibility, and is currently supported, as in public record, by Iran and Syria. As time went on and there became an opportunity to work with the Palestinian people and their leadership, the Oslo Accords was established, hoping for a land of peace. And Israel at that time agreed to gradual Palestinian self-rule in Gaza and the West Bank, and those were the first steps that were made towards the establishment of a Palestinian state. The Palestinian Authority was created. It was an outgrowth of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, and was created to govern the Palestinian territories as they were known, which were respectively in Gaza and in the West Bank. As time went on, not a few years later, in 1994, Jordan and Israel established their peace agreement, and it became the second Arab state behind Egypt to sign a peace treaty with Israel. That lasted for a few years, and as you know, in 1995, a year later, Yitzhak Rabin was murdered in Tel Aviv after giving a very high-profile speech, and he was murdered by actually a Jewish fundamentalist who was not ready for peace. As time went on in 2000 to 2005, there began the second intifada, and they tried to, President Clinton and the Clinton administration tried to make an agreement, a final settlement agreement between Israel and the Palestinians in the year 2000. Ehud Barak was the president at the time, and that failed, unfortunately, and it led to more violent Palestinian uprising. And I can tell you, I was living in Jerusalem during that time, and it was a very intense time. There weren't any separation fences. There weren't any guardrails that were set up. It was a free-flowing full land between West Bank, between Green Line Israel, and between Gaza. There was some set up between Gaza, but mostly in that area, it was open land and territory. And that's when the fences started to go up after the suicide bombings. Suicide attacks went down by 98% after the security fence was established. In 2005 is when things started shifting in Gaza. In 2005, there was an active disengagement from the Palestinians where the Israeli government evacuated all Gaza settlements and withdrew all troops from Gaza. And some of you may remember that time. It was a time where we saw settlers being pulled out of their homes. They were resettled by the state of Israel. They were given money to resettle in the Green Line. Many of them settled to Sderot and other areas, other communities farther away also. And that was the disengagement area. In that time, they began construction of a security barrier, which was very controversial, but it was set up because it was creating the separation between Gaza, which was going to be a Palestinian territory, and it was given full governmental responsibility for that land. In 2006, Hamas ran against Fatah, which is the governing body of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, and they won in a surprise victory. Nobody expected them to win, but they won. And they took over control of the Palestinian parliament. And there was a lot of infighting between Fatah, between the Palestinian Authority, governing body, and Hamas during that time. And Western nations cut off aid to the Palestinian Authority at that time because Hamas was already designated as a terror organization. In 2007, fighting broke out between Gaza and Hamas and Fatah forces, so this was a civil war in between the ruling parties, and Hamas defeated Fatah and officially took over the Gaza Strip, as it's called. The Gaza Strip, just to understand, it's 40 miles deep, is 3 miles deep and 40 miles wide. It is one of the most densely populated regions in the world, and about a little less than 3 million people occupy that area. Today, we start to see the Palestinian power struggle, Hamas versus Fatah. It happens regularly, and it happens, we see it in small civil wars that they have in between them. In the West Bank, currently, the Palestinian Authority, the Fatah, are the governing body and have security cooperations with the Israeli government. Hamas has no cooperations with the current Israeli government and has not since they've engaged power. How do they compare, just for an understanding, so everybody can be on the same way? Fatah are known as secular moderates. Hamas are Islamic extremists. Fatah is supported by the United States, the European Union, and most Arab states. And Hamas is mostly supported by Iran and Syria. Fatah, in their charters, which I will show you in a second, the Fatah notes that they are attempting peace with Israel, and Hamas has no recognition of Israel as a sovereign state in its region. Fatah controls parts of the West Bank, not under Israel control, major cities known as Area A, different cities, Ramallah, Jericho, Hebron. Those cities are under full Palestinian control, and the Hamas controls all of Gaza. There is no Israeli security forces in Gaza at this moment. 2008 and 2009, almost daily rocket attacks against Israeli towns and provoked airstrikes, and that's when we started to see there was a three-week-long war at that time where 1,400 Palestinians were killed and 13 Israelis, and both sides were accused of war crimes in that moment. And Israel was criticized for using excessive force, and it has been up until this moment. The charters, just so to understand, you won't be able to see it clearly, but I can just tell you, and I won't read them all to you, and you're free, it's public, you can go Google them. The Hamas charters are online, and they were originally issued in 1988, and the goals of Hamas, the Islamic resistance movement, is a distinguished Palestinian movement whose allegiance is to Allah and whose way of life is Islam. It strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine. On the destruction of Israel, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. And the call for jihad, which I know has been, we've heard about it in the past 24 to 48 hours. The day the enemies usurp part of Muslim land, jihad becomes the individual duty of every Muslim in the face of the Jews' usurpation. It is compulsory that the banner of jihad be raised. So one thing that I'd like to just point out, the myth that this happened because of Israeli population, because of Israeli occupation. There is no question that Israeli occupation carries a lot of challenges. I don't deny that. I think that we are in a time where there are many big challenges around democracy, and we know that the Israeli government has had a lot of challenges as of late. But I want to just lay out one fact. That more than 18 years ago, Israel forcibly removed its own citizens from Gaza and returned all of its land to the Palestinian people so that they would thrive in freedom. And when Hamas overtook in 2006 and it's exercised its freedom to impoverish and oppress Palestinians, impose medieval restrictions on women, and terrorize and murder innocent Israelis while blaming it on the Israeli occupation. Will I say it exists? I believe elements of occupation do exist. I say that with full confidence. I don't believe that they are the cause of Hamas. Hamas means destruction in Hebrew, and it has the likings of ISIS, as we've come to hear. And it has been incredibly painful to watch what has been going on. We know that we've gotten here because of what I laid out tonight, and of course there are many other nuances to it, but I wanted to just make sure that when we're talking and hearing about the people and hearing about the region and answering your questions, that you have at least this foundational understanding of how Hamas came into the land. We think that's very important. So really the next step to understand is what's happening with the people and what's going on with the region. And I want to turn to Heidi to share about our beloved community partnership.
I'm going to start by saying that was way more organized than anything I'm going to say right now. So for those of you who were with us at the vigil on Tuesday night, there were about 4,600 people there. And I'm part of a group of CEOs of federations around the country, and we're looking, and they're all posting in their chats, WhatsApp is on fire these days. Philadelphia, we had 2,000 people, and St. Louis, we had 1,200 people, and, big cities. And the reason that we had 4,600 people in San Diego is because of our relationship with Shar HaNegev. It is absolutely and completely connected to the partnership that we have had for 25 years with this region. And for those of you who are sort of old school, for many years the Jewish Agency for Israel ran these partnership agreements, and they were really fundamental to the development, the economic development of the state of Israel. And so a community in the US would be matched with a community in Israel, and through the Jewish Agency, you would send money These were really initially primarily financial relationships. And so we had one, and because San Diego was a little bit of an outpost, we didn't get Tel Aviv and we didn't get Jerusalem. We got Shar HaNegev, which and 20 years ago there were really not very many people living there. It's how many of you have been there? Just curious. Okay, so that's a lot of people. So if you've been, it is not a place that if you didn't know to go and you were just going on a trip to Israel that you would ever go. You just wouldn't go there. There's not big tourist sites there. You might go if there's a poppy festival that's spectacular and it's very beautiful. The thing about Shar HaNegev is it's stunning. It's just a beautiful, physically beautiful place. And 25 years ago, it was like, living in Claremont, you could go to the beach in La Jolla, right? It's that close. And people in Shar HaNegev had friends in Gaza, and they would go to the beach together. That doesn't happen anymore. Shar HaNegev is a community you can see here. So, you're looking at that Gaza border. The city of Sderot, which is a city of about 30,000 people, is surrounded with a ring of kibbutzim and a moshav. So kibbutzim, we know what those are. A moshav is like an agricultural village. It's really very similar to kibbutz. The moshav is observant religious called yechini. Everything else is a secular kibbutz. Some of these kibbutzim predate the founding of the State of Israel by decades. Nahalos in particular, Kfar Aza, they are very, very old kibbutzim. The original chalutzim founded these places. They still have enormous amount of agriculture there. Any of you get those Dorot garlic cubes, those frozen garlic and ginger? Kibbutz Dorot is in Shar HaNegev. And it was important to the State of Israel to have a strong community living in this region, because you look at it and you see why. It is essential that it be populated, that it be defended, and the State of Israel and the Negev, when you think about Ben Gurion and the South and the Negev and how important that is, Shar HaNegev is the gate to the Negev, right? This is the gate of the Negev. It really is protecting the South, it is protecting the North, and having Shar HaNegev strong and well protected is incredibly important. You can see why right now. So we had this relationship with Shar HaNegev, and it was mostly us sending them money, and we sent them money. But that relationship has evolved and it has grown. And there was a point many years ago where anyone who had their kids at the Jewish Academy knew Larry Ashetel, who's a member of our congregation. Larry Ashetel really had a vision for a relationship with the educational community in Shar HaNegev, and started to put together money to fund a shielded there was shielded, classrooms and a high school that was basically entirely a bomb shelter, right? But it was also a high school, because that's what you have to have there. Since, what Rabbi was talking about in the early 2000s, every resident of Shar HaNegev has to live within 15 seconds of a shelter. You have to be within 15 seconds of a shelter. Not a minute, not 30 seconds, 15 seconds. Think about that for elderly people, for young children. So when you go there, you see these brightly colored shacks along the side of the road. They're beautiful, they're painted, they're colorful. They are shelters, they are everywhere. You do not go in Shar HaNegev more than 15 seconds from a shelter. At the same time, people can't wait to move there, or at least they couldn't. I don't think that's going to be true in the same way anymore. But as of a year ago, every single kibbutz in Shar HaNegev had a waiting list for housing. And as of 6 months ago, think about that, right? Think about what you've heard in the news about Gaza and the rockets raining down on Gaza and all of the incendiary balloons in Gaza. And yet, every single one of these kibbutzim had a waiting list. And I just have to speak to the social contract of this place. And it's not like Tel Aviv, and it's not like Jerusalem. Shar HaNegev has a regional municipality, right? So it has, in the center, the educational system and the senior center and the recreational facilities and the community, the public college. It has the biggest public college in Israel is right there, serving Bedouins and Israelis. And so they're all located sort of in the center. And they work with all of the kibbutzim, and there is not a person in Shar HaNegev who is not watched from birth to 120 years old. They start on the kibbutz, and the kibbutz educational system takes care of them. They're in communication with the regional municipality, who is then dealing with them when they move into grade school, and if they're seniors, if they have special needs, whatever it is, there is every week, think about this, every week, the entire sort of infrastructure meets. Right, so the JCC and the senior center and the education personnel and the municipal, they meet all the time to talk about what they can do to take care of their citizens better. One of the challenges of living there is obviously the challenges that they're dealing with now, the need for resilience, the trauma. The trauma in Gaza among children, 48% of the kids in Gaza, in Shar HaNegev, 48% of the kids are in some sort of psychological treatment. They have 48 therapists for 10,000 people, and it's not nearly enough, right? And yet people want to live there and want to come back there. It says something about the quality of life, and again, that social contract and the sense of being part of a community. There's also a lot of economic opportunity there. They have an incredible economic generator called SouthUp, and they've been starting business after business. People are coming to Shar HaNegev to start their businesses because labor is inexpensive, because they're giving them this space and this technology. They have Sapir College right there. So there's many, many things about the region that are really quite extraordinary. But it is a difficult place to live. Iron Dome trucks are running back and forth. The Erez border crossing, which is on Kibbutz Erez, is one of the most heavily guarded border crossings in the world. And they, you know, when we were there on the community trip, in May, we all had lunch in kibbutzim that line the border. So, do you have the list, the kibbutzim listed there?
On the outer
No.
side, not in that one.
Okay. So, and when you're hearing the news now, and I want to be really clear, this is hard. The epicenter of what we are seeing here is in Shar HaNegev. The worst things you're hearing about, the most horrific headlines you're seeing, the ones I don't even want to repeat about, you know, babies being slaughtered in their homes, that's Kfar Aza. So some of you here, you know, on the community trip, had lunch in someone's home in Kfar Aza. Nahal Oz, which is one of the kibbutzim that I talked about, the entire leadership of that kibbutz has been wiped out. So everything you're reading about, the worst of it, happened here. And so we know these people. They are our friends. I'm looking at Meg. Meg, you know Livnat. You spend time with her in her workshop. You know, this is a woman who was an art therapist. Her entire family was murdered, her 3 children, she and her husband in her home. We are going, and I'm sorry, and this is hard, but the relationship that we have this community means, you know, we were devastated when we learned about what was happening in Ukraine, right? Like, we listened to that and we were horrified and we were mortified. And here, these are our friends. There is no one who is untouched by this. If you have been to Israel, if you have been on any trip, the kids on the Platt trip, every single kid on the Platt trip has stayed in Shar HaNegev, has stayed on one of these kibbutzim. Every kid who's gone from the Jewish Academy, every kid who's gone from Swal, every kid who's gone from the Ken, they have all stayed in these homes and stayed with these kids. And the atrocities and the brutality and the desecration that you're hearing about all took place here. So what I will say is that I love this place. San Diego loves this place. We don't have a funding relationship anymore. We have a partnership. And Jaffe hasn't been involved in years, the Jewish agency. We decided we didn't need him anymore because the people-to-people relationships between Shar HaNegev and San Diego are so powerful, are so close. And these relationships date back now decades. We are friends. And so, yeah, we fund them. But when I met Ophir Libstein, who is the mayor who recently passed away, what he said to me was not, here's what we need funding for. He said, what can Shar HaNegev contribute back to San Diego? Here's what we have to offer. Here's what we can do for you. When the hurricane hit, the drizzle that hit, the light rain, I had about 100 messages from people in Shar HaNegev asking what they could do. How could they help us? I mean, it was comical, you know, but that's the relationship. And the sense of loss, the friendships, the people we have lost, and the not knowing, the hostages, right? I mean, there are, more than 100 people dead, and the numbers are going to go up, folks. I mean, we are at the beginning of this, and the news is going to get worse. Hostages taken. This isn't something happening in a far-off land that we can, sort of feel really badly about theoretically. These are people we know and love and care about, and it's awful, and they need us, and they want to rebuild. They want to move forward. I will just quickly say that what has happened there, every kibbutz within 7 kilometers of the border has been evacuated. Okay, so that's 7 kilometers. So Ruchama, you can see out at the end there, people are still allowed to live in Ruchama because there have been attacks right around it. Most of them have left as well. And so what happened is, they couldn't get in, right? The IDF didn't come. And there will be a reckoning as to what happened here, but people were trapped. They were in their safe rooms. They didn't have power. They couldn't get out. And there are still terrorists throughout this area. This is not clear. They can't drive on these roads. They can't leave their houses. They can't clear these bodies because there are still terrorists throughout the entire area. So they knocked on the door when the IDF could finally get in, and they didn't believe them. They said, we're Israeli, and they didn't believe them. They didn't come out of their rooms. They didn't unlock the doors. Finally, they got them out of their rooms, and these people left with the clothes on their backs. And they are now scattered throughout Israel, right? And they go into communities, so they have a partner kibbutz, which is a wonderful thing because they don't want to separate. They want to stay with their kibbutz. They want to stay with their community. And so we now are working to figure out where people are, right? Are they safe? Are they taken? So the trauma is unimaginable. The chaos, the destruction is unimaginable, and the resolve and the resilience of these people is beyond belief. You can't live there if you don't have that kind of resilience and you don't have that kind of resolve. And as soon as we can, we're going to bring a plane load of people there to help them rebuild. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but it's an amazing place, and I can't wait to get back.
You heard, if you were with us on the Yamim Noraim, on the high holidays, that Rabbi said several times, Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh, all of Israel is responsible for one another. To our non-Jewish friends here, you will understand that every Jew feels, by tradition and by the closeness to the land of Israel, that we are responsible for each other, and this is true now more than ever. To the region of Sha'ar HaNegev, I say this by saying that they once needed a Torah for their school, for teaching, for a Reform rabbi that was going there, and they didn't have one. So Leslie Mills helped us, and our executive director, and we sent a Torah that belonged to us, to them, to give. And hopefully it sits safe somewhere underground, and they can use it as they need. And that was just very important to us. It didn't take 1 second to think, they need a Torah, and we're going to give it to them. So everybody feels responsible for each other, and in our community, you know the term 6 degrees of separation. Here and among Jews, it's 1 to 2, 1 and 1.5 degrees of separation. So I want to read you a little bit of what my cousin sent to me. He's a humanist rabbi in Reut, which is next to the Maccabi city of Modi'in. It's halfway between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. But before that, I will say that you all know someone. You all have family. You all have friends. We are all connected to this. In my family in particular, we are 4 children that are serving in the army, in the regular army now. And one, a new dad, by just a couple of months, is being called up. Where is he? My cousin says to me, he's in the east. Well, there's the east. Who knows where he is? The entire state of Israel is east on land, on sea. Nobody knows where he is, and nobody knows where the other four are. So we are all involved in knowing someone who's serving. And by the way, my 80-year-old cousin said to me, oh no, we're all doing things. We're in the farms when farmers are being called up. We are helping in the stores when store owners are being called up. We're serving, we're delivering, we're giving food. Every single person, child to 120, are working to help someone else who needs the help because they've been called up. We have a young lady who her mother is a dentist. She has to be in her late 40s, so out of the Army for a very long time. But she's a dentist and she's being called up. Why? Because she needs to identify with dental records the dead. It's heartbreaking. So my cousin says to me, he's probably in his early 60s, as I remember. The situation here is very difficult for us to digest. Everyone that I know knows at least about one person who was killed, murdered, or kidnapped. I was at a funeral this afternoon of a friend's brother, Amir Tsur, an officer, 23 years old, served in a very special unit, excellent in anything he touched in his life. He was Israel's champion in navigation running. He was a gifted pianist. He was excellent in all his studies, and he was killed on Saturday. Such a beautiful flower, someone who had all his life before him. How can it be? And he is only one of 1,300. My cousin has been a promoter of teaching Holocaust studies to adults, to high school students, and he takes or took people to Poland regularly. In his service to the country, he served in the Air Force for years, and after that was a consultant and still is. He was coming here to speak to us on October 20th, but we are at war, he says, and I can't leave my family. My teacher about Poland in Yad Vashem was Alex Danzig. He is declared missing. He was kidnapped by Hamas. He is 75 years old, an intellectual farmer. He is well known by Polish politicians and is admired by his many students. We pray that he is still alive. And now I will just say, and this is one man's opinion, on top of that fact, we are led by a criminal and all his thoughts are aimed at one very personal target. They, in the secular community, are angry at the government and they want change. And protest after protest has been about that change. But he says, in this war, some of the people are led to extreme and forget that we must stay human. Yes, we have to destroy Hamas, but we have a responsibility toward 2 million hostages who live in Gaza, and of course also responsibility to more than 100 Israelis who are kept there. And you can see the pain and the agony in how much he loves his country. Our family now are 5 generations in Israel from the time just after before the Holocaust, and they have no other place to go. And so they will stay, and they will fight, and they will try and create a human place where humanity lives.
What we wanted to do tonight was to humanize this atrocity and to understand the connections from Sha'ar Negev to our families. And all of us, like Rabbi Bernstein said, all have 1 or 2 degrees of connection. And there are a lot of people in our community that are in pain, and a lot of people, as we will continue to do. So I want to take a moment right now to reflect on that and to hear and to be in a song of healing, to have an opportunity for us to be in this space together, to hold that. So take a moment if you're thinking of someone. Just hold their name in your heart.
לכולם שמות יקרא הרופא לשבורי לב ומכבש לעצבותם מונה לכולם שמות יקרא binder of their wounds, counter of uncountable stars. You know where they are. Healer of the broken hearted, binder of our wounds, counter of uncountable stars. You know who we are. Hallelujah.
on the screens here in a moment on your screen online, there's a QR code. I know some people are already putting in questions. I invite you to take a moment if you have a question that you'd like to ask so that we can try to honor and respond accordingly.
Well, if you're not tech savvy and scanning QR codes isn't your thing, you can go to jewishinsandiego.org and there will be a
This
button.
isn't that one.
Oh, that's not that one.
That's not that one.
Don't do that. No, you can do that. It's still good. It's still.
We'll get it. We'll
Sorry,
get it.
I thought that
No,
was what
that
it was.
isn't that one. This is for questions.
Oh,
This is for questions. Sure. So if you can't get it, there's
What is it?
actually paper and pens right
'em down.
outside, and we will have not that many, but those who don't have computers, that's okay. Those that don't have will have the opportunity. So we're not going to each answer a question. We're going to take some questions to see. The first question I'm going to say is, Heidi, how is your son in Israel doing?
I was going to lead with that before. My son in Israel is, like 20 minutes away from landing at LAX, so thank you. Yeah. For those of you, my oldest son was living in Jerusalem, is living in Jerusalem, and, I'm looking at you, and it's not easy to have kids in Israel right now, and there's a terrible process they're going through, whether to stay or to go, and they're guilty for leaving, and it's hard to stay, and it's incredibly difficult. There's a lot of American kids living in Israel right now who are really struggling with these choices, and it's hard. So Isaac's home, but he was supposed to come home anyway. He told me he feels really guilty. I said, you were already booked on a flight a month ago. What are you feeling guilty about? But he's home. He'll be home. He'll be home soon, and then when he goes back, who knows? It's complicated.
Thank you. One of the questions is, why doesn't Egypt allow the Gazans to escape? It's a really good question. So to understand, there's a lot of history behind the Palestinian people. I think it requires just a little bit of understanding the term Palestinian and how it's understood today in terms of its derivation of length of those people who are considered connected in, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking on the word. Those who are considered refugees. When people leave a region, or they've escaped for political asylum or whatnot, whatever it is, dangerous situation, they're considered refugees, the people who leave. The Palestinian people have a perpetual designation as refugees, which means that if their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren leave, then even if they weren't born there, if they were born in Jordan, or they were born in Syria, or they were born in Lebanon, they're still considered refugees by United Nations designation. So this is an important understanding to have, because that designation puts a lot of challenge on the surrounding Arab countries. How do we hold those individuals when they're already claimed as Palestinian refugees, and holding that, understanding that their ancestors, and those that came before can mirror what Israel has, which is the right of return. So in Egypt, there's one crossing called the Rafah crossing. The crossing was damaged, obviously, during this latest battle, but the Egyptian government military closed the border before this was going on, because there was an onslaught of Gazans, many of them innocent civilians, trying to get across and trying to get out of this zone of Gaza. And to be clear, Hamas is not Palestine, is not representative of the Palestinian people. I want to be very clear about that. Hamas is a terrorist organization that has relationship with, that promotes their representation of the Palestinian people, but it is not. And so Egypt doesn't know how to handle the multitude of individuals and civilians that would want to come over. And how do they distinguish between those that are civilians and those that are connected with Hamas? It's very, very challenging. So that is a little bit of the why. And it's a dynamic situation, and it continues to be as such. They're looking to open it for humanitarian reasons, but limiting it to 2,000 to 3,000 people crossing a day. They're looking to get foreign nationals out, Americans and other nationals, to get them out of Gaza and using that border crossing. That's why the negotiators are there. They came with Secretary Blinken, trying to navigate that piece. But it is very, very complicated. There's a question here. What can I do to help? You want to take that, Heidi?
Now I can give my answer. So I think there's a couple things that are important, and we've got this up on our website. I mean, look, first and foremost, there's a desperate need for financial resources. I'm just going to put that out there. There is need for victim assistance, the Victims of Terror Fund, the families of victims. There is a need for massive trauma response and respite. There is going to be a need for very soon strategic planning and, thinking about what happens next. Physical reconstruction, infrastructure, medical needs, all of that. So that's, pretend I didn't say that before, jewishinsandiego.org, we'll talk about that. The community's been unbelievably generous. We're closing in on $5 million raised already, which is astonishing and not nearly enough. But I think there's other important things to do. I think it's really important to be well informed and be an ambassador, right, to bear witness to these stories, because the narrative is going to shift. It is already happening. We are going to see the Israeli government and the IDF respond, and they're going to respond with force, as they have every right to do, and they absolutely must do. And we're going to see this narrative starting to shift in ways that it is so important for us to stay informed and to tell the story and to bear witness to what we are seeing and what has happened in Israel. I think, supporting the interfaith, connecting with people who are not Jewish around this, engaging with them, sharing those stories, and making sure you are well informed. All of these things are really, really important. And the last thing I'll share is, right now they're not looking for a lot of volunteers to rush over. And if you don't speak Hebrew, like I've had people calling me and saying they want to go over and, provide legal services, they don't speak Hebrew. That's not really helpful right now. But the messages of support, the reaching out to people in Israel, you are not burdening them, you are lifting them up. It is so powerful for them to hear from us, and they are so moved. The images that we sent them of Tuesday night, the people gathered, everyone has been texting and calling and WhatsApp, and they are totally uplifted by that. So never feel like you're burdened. Even if they don't answer, it doesn't matter. Reach out, send those notes, stay in contact, and it does more than you can imagine.
And I just want to add that sometimes they have no idea that what we're doing or how on top of it we might be. My family have no idea that I get all of the alerts for every rocket that's shot from wherever it's coming from into the country, from Hezbollah in the north, from Hamas in the south. I know what's happening, and they were shocked. You know that? Yes, I said, I am following you. I am with you every minute of the day, whether I want to be or not. That sound is coming through, and I know what's going on, and I know your terror, and that's enough. They need to know that we are with them all the time, no matter what. Question How do you think the political situation with Netanyahu contributed to the lack of readiness on the army's part? Here is my own personal opinion. He allowed the very right wing of his party, which supports him, which is why he's the prime minister, to start to change the judicial system, which has been leading the country, which has been so important to everyone, and lead it in and change it in a way that was hurting the middle and the left. This is not the way that you do things in Israel. And so what happened was, this is what started the people coming out and complaining, and being thousands upon thousands of people every night in Tel Aviv, every night in Jerusalem, demonstrating that they are not interested in this kind of behavior, in this kind of change, and no one listened to them. And so the army said, we cannot follow a leader like this, and we will not go into the army, and we will not go into service. I think that the holiday contributed to the non-readiness of the moment. But I also think that people's hearts were destroyed by the changes that Netanyahu wants to bring to the country. And that kind of change makes a young person say, I can't live like this, and I can't support a government. They are all going in now. They don't care, no matter what. They are not backing down. The reservists are going in. They want to be there. They want to defend. They love the country. And as my cousin said, and then we'll deal with the government after.
Can I add another thing that I heard today, which is that, not only are the reservists showing up, not just at 100%, but 150%. People who were not called up are showing up. The group that was the Brothers and Sisters for Change, right? And now they're Brothers and Sisters for Israel. They have completely retooled. The whole protest movement that was this astronomical, amazing movement has transformed overnight in these incredibly positive civil society ways to support Israel. And Haredi people, they can't serve in the army, but they're showing up to drive for them and cook for them and participate in society. And it's this amazing thing to watch people coming together. And none of them are happy with the government, but they are showing up for Israel in ways that the country was, it's just a different place than it was a week ago, in ways that are actually kind of amazing and tragic at the same time.
Thank you for asking that question.
Three-part question. What has been the reaction from the Muslim community in San Diego? Have they reached out to the Jewish community? And have these events had an adverse effect on our interfaith relations? So I will tell you that since I arrived, one of my priority missions was to establish multi-faith partnerships. I will tell you that we've had the largest outpouring of outreach and support from many of our faith partners. I will tell you that our relationship with the Muslim community in San Diego is very compromised and problematic. Some of the Muslim community is promoting the Celebrate Our Martyrs on campus, SDSU, UCSD. There is, and so to say, have we heard from them? The answer is no. There are a group of Muslims in our community from Afghanistan that we have begun to establish relationships with, many thanks to Jason Berkovich in the back. And we've established a very nice relationship. In fact, Tuesday evening, we were supposed to have a program on Afghans and understanding Afghan and Jewish relationships, Muslim and Jewish relationships, and that will happen. It's just had to be postponed because we had the vigil. And the person we were connected to, who will come and be here, and has been showing up and been a friend of the Jewish community. He was planning to attend the vigil on Tuesday evening. He was threatened to attend. I don't want to sugarcoat any of this. We work really hard to build multi-faith partnerships. We spend a lot of time endeavoring into these connections so that we know that we're striving to love our neighbor. This is the current climate that we are dealing with, even among our faith leadership. We have a very tenuous, rocky relationship with some of the Muslim community at this point. We tried to endeavor into reestablishing this. Unfortunately, we're almost at a dead end. I'm hopeful that maybe something down the road will change. I want to be very honest with you that I don't believe in this moment it can. So you're our people, and we want to be honest and understanding with that. Does it mean there's hatred with one another? No, I'm not. That's not where we are. It just means that we're not able to be in partnerships in the way we are with some of our other partners. But I'm very proud of some and connected with some of our wonderful partners who have reached out, have offered support, have offered any way that they can be here. Many of them showed up at our vigil, which was wonderful, and we're so happy to be in those partnerships. I'm kind of scared, and I'm 10 years old. How do I stop myself from hating? Listen to that question. I think that it's really important to feel your pain. And it's important to feel the emotions that you have and to be able to be angry and to be able to be upset and to be able to know that there's a lot of wounds in this world right now. I believe hatred takes up too much energy and space in our souls. It does. Think about when we're angry with someone. We hold on to it for a long time, or we hold on to it because we have a grudge or something happened. I don't hold on to that. I can be annoyed with something. I can be angry with it in the moment. I can be upset about it. And I'm angry now. I am. And I'm in pain. And many of us are. But I don't want to live in that pain. And I don't want you to live in that pain. I think it's really important that we can lean on the people that are around us, our parents, our family, our community, our rabbis, to help us, to support us, to love us, to know that we're not alone, and to not hold that pain alone, and to know that we don't have to hate. We don't have to hate to be angry. We can be angry. We don't have to live in that hate. And I really, really invite you to not live in that hate, because it just takes up so much time. There's so much we have to do in this world now. There's so much we already had to do. Now we have to do more, right? We may be tired. And what I'm going to tell you, it's really important to do fun things too. It's really important to celebrate Shabbat like we're all going to do tomorrow night. And I hope many of you are going to be here, one of our 2 services. It's really important to hang out with your friends and not feel guilty, to go to a show, to go to movies, to go to a restaurant. You have to take care of yourself, because that lessens hate. We can't be in that pain. We can't live in that pain, because then they win. And they're not going to win. They're not going to win from us losing who we are. And that's why when Heidi talks about the resilience of a community like Sha'ar Negev, and we've seen it, many of us firsthand, this is what we do. We continue, we survive, we don't only survive, we thrive. So I hope you'll thrive with me. And if you ever need any support, you know where to find us.
Can I share something quickly on this?
Please.
I just want to share with everybody that I think a thing that is contributing, and I think we have to be really mindful of this as the society, is the role that social media is playing in this and what it is doing to young people in particular. The images and the algorithm that feeds more and more graphic and brutal images, more messages of hate. You watch one, you get 10. You watch 10, you get 1,000. And it is addictive. It is addictive. And we are seeing this now explode with images out of Israel and out of Gaza. And if there are tools out there for helping young people to sort of break this addiction, to break this cycle. And I think, as I think about what is really causing the divide and tearing people apart farther, we are happy to share that. We have great resources. I'm sure you have resources for that, but I don't think we can underestimate the role that is playing in causing young people to feel this way and to driving them. So
in other words, less time on social media.
less time on social media for, well, what did you say? Go to a movie, but
Go
like
to
a happy movie.
yeah,
Go to a happy movie.
Happy movie.
But yeah.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 is out. Ridiculously stupid and funny.
You're like a very big Greek wedding fan, though.
Yeah,
you like those movies
I like
a
those
lot.
movies.
He's
Very-
a big fan of those movies.
But light, but light, loving, kind, not violent. Just, it's a question here. I heard today on the news that Netanyahu is forming a new coalition without the far right. Do you know anything about it? Yes. It's already been, it'll be formalized tomorrow. There's a national unity government he formed with Benny Gantz. This is a wartime cabinet. So let me be very clear what that means. It does not mean that a new government is permanently in place. It means that there is a wartime government established with a coalition. It is not the full government, because the opposition leader, Yair Lapid, has not yet signed on to it, but the opposition has gotten a lot smaller, so that the unity government is acting. The far-right ministers are not part, they are part of the government still, but they are not part of the wartime cabinet. The wartime cabinet are made up of mostly centrists, and they are, and it's limited. And there are new ministers without portfolio that have been established. So what that means is their job is specifically war-related, and there is no legislation that can be passed in the Knesset unless it is pertaining to anything dealing with this war with Gaza. So that's the current status of the government, just so everybody is aware. What is a threat from the north, from Hezbollah? So as we're talking about individuals, one of my cousins, we have two in the IDF, one was just activated, just finished IDF last year, was just reactivated. He's a combat soldier. He was sent to the north, and now he's in the Golan training. And what we're hoping and praying for is that it doesn't become more regional. We don't know, but proxies sit in the north. They sit in Lebanon. They sit in Syria. And we don't know what the plan is, their plan. We didn't know what this plan was. So it's likely that there is some coordinated effort. But imagine there are 360,000 reservists that are sitting in Israel right now preparing for whatever is the next step. And so there is no, when they call up a number like that, it means that they're preparing on all fronts. But there is no active knowledge that at least the public is aware of at this moment.
But what we are aware of is of our friends and the United States, with its best warship, is in place already, and England has sent its Navy to help. And they are making quite certain to everyone in the area that they are there to help at a moment's notice, and that it would be very unwise to go against the American and British Navy.
There is a question here. What will the end result of this war be? What will the end result be? To eliminate Hamas. And when we talk about what the cost of that is, we know that the cost will be very high. But I cannot imagine at this moment, and given that more Israeli civilians have died at any time since the Holocaust, that the IDF is going to stop and the Israeli government is going to stop at nothing until it eliminates Hamas in all its form. Will this eliminate Hamas fully? I don't know if that can ever be. It's an ideology. It's not, it's not just people. It's like ISIS. It doesn't, it just doesn't go away. I think that it can slow it down significantly, and it can really do irreparable damage. I just don't know. But that is the end goal, is to eliminate Hamas. And that may take weeks, that may take months. We don't have no idea of what's going to be. We're just at the beginning of this. And that's why when Heidi said we have to be vigilant and really speak the truth about this, about what's going on, this was not provoked. Israel did not enter into this war. This was unknown, unforeseen. And that's why the language and the tenor from even all Western countries, Germany, France, Great Britain, the United States, that usually temper caution when talking about issues of conflict, there is no language of that sort being promoted by any Western country at this time. It is, we support you all the way, we are giving you what you need, and eradicating terrorism should be your number one goal, and we support you.
And I think something we're going to have to expect here is, and I think there's a reason between Rabbi Navarez and I, we did like 200 television interviews in the past, 72 hours. And it's to get ahead of the narrative that's going to be coming here. And I just want to speak to what I think is the intersection that we're going to see here between rising anti-Semitism and what is happening in Israel right now and what's about to happen in Gaza. And, we need to prepare ourselves for the anti-Semitism that's going to come from the left, right? Not just the right. And that is going to get worse over the next few months. I don't know if you mind if I promote, but next week we have Project Shema coming in. Project Shema is an organization that is really all about dealing with anti-Semitism coming from the left, from progressive spaces and a progressive mindset. They are retooling what they're doing. It is an open to the public event, and it is really going to be focused on what we can anticipate coming out of this conflict around the absolute certainty that there is going to be a rise in anti-Semitism. And, if you're looking at some of the statements that are coming out, I am talking about the result of this war now in the U.S. Those of you who are following school districts and universities that are putting out statements, and these statements are just dripping with moral equivalency, right? False moral equivalency. We are so sad to hear about the war that has broken out in the Middle East, and, the pain and suffering on both sides. Every time we see one of those, we're playing whack-a-mole with that. And you're calling, and I'm calling, and the AJC and the ADL, and we are saying, look, this statement cannot stand. This statement cannot stand. And they've been correcting those statements. They have been correcting them, but we are going to see more and more of that. And so you want to know what you can do. You can be alert. You can let us know, let AJC know, let ADL know, let Rabbi know, because we can't let those things go at this point, because it will snowball. So
100%. I think we're having issues with where this is, as Heidi said. So just to follow up, I can tell you there are 60 questions. We're going to do 2 more. And then, I'll stay for a few minutes if anybody wants to ask anything in particular, but we're also going to close with some music and some prayer and to have a time to come together, as we promised. So there's questions about today in my daughter's high school, she's a senior, and a person in her group of her friends made a Holocaust joke. I was sick to my stomach and was at a loss what to tell her. The lack of awareness by these kids is very hard, and I was at a loss to tell her what the right thing to say or do is. Is there a right thing to say to my child in this situation? Am I telling her to speak up or step away right now? It's a great question, and a question that has been going on for a long time. This is not new to the war. This will inevitably exacerbate or multiply. And I think that I don't believe that students should say something they're not equipped to say. I think that's really important. We should never put anybody in a position that doesn't have the tools or the language to do so. Over the coming week or 2, we're going to be sending out messages to our college students and trying to get them on a Zoom so that we can have an opportunity to connect with them and to equip them with tools on college campuses, and to give them resources and the ways that we believe can help them. We've been meeting with our high school students who are engaged post-B'nai Mitzvah. We've been meeting with our 7th, our 8th, and 9th grades. I believe that there is ignorance all around, and people are going to continue to make jokes. They're going to amplify those jokes. They're going to push boundaries. And what I can say is, in this moment, this is not a moment for us to hide and move inward. This is actually a moment to stand up, but not in the face of bullies, not to put yourself in harm's way ever, but to be able to say with confidence, there's much more to the story. Or to be able to say, find that extremely offensive. You have every right to do so. You don't have to hide that. It is offensive. It's demeaning. It's hurtful. And sometimes I know students are afraid to say that because they feel the retribution will be they'll be made fun of, or they'll be ostracized from their groups, or something on social media will come out about them, and so on and so forth. And we can shoulda, coulda, woulda, but we have to make change. The only change comes when we stand up for what we believe in. So you don't have to have the knowledge necessarily to equip yourself with exactly the same tools, but you can speak your truth honestly and resolutely. Can't argue with how you're feeling about something. It's very hard to do that. Just a quick answer to this, a response. Do most Palestinians support Hamas? The answer is no. Unequivocally no. They are, as you see, it caught many of them in harm's way. And the majority of Palestinians do not support Hamas. They were voted in, surprisingly, because they promised them, they sold themselves on a bill of a being charitable organization. They were taking care of the Palestinian people. They were charitable. That's how they were surprised. I can tell you, I do a lot of work in Nicaragua. And the Sandinistas, when they came back to power with Daniel Ortega, how did the Sandinista party come back to power? Because they went door to door saying, if you vote for us, we'll give you a chicken. It's not a joke. If you have nothing and you're offered a little bit of something, and all it takes for me is to check a box, I'll check a box, right? If you have nothing and you have basically nothing, and you're offered a little scrap of something, you're going to take it. Same thing happened with the Palestinians. They had nothing. They were promised something. Didn't come to fruition. Last question. There were so many. Do you think that the American government or American citizens see any parallels in our current political disarray to what happened in Israel, especially as our vulnerability to violence fringe groups? Any of you want to take that? Anybody want to take that? take it. I'll take it. Do I think that there are parallels? 100%.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, and it comes up all the time.
All the time.
Right? I mean, and the situation that we faced, you know, a few years ago with our government and some of the threats to sort of the basic foundational principles of American democracy that we were looking at.
Absolutely.
And when we talked about what was happening with the Supreme Court, I think that many Israelis were, you know, looking to us and saying, look, you know, not so different than what some of the challenges we were facing before. I think the situation that, you know, we're seeing now and how the government relates to that and some of the political chaos does feel different, and the threats that they face are very, very different.
Very different.
I mean, that's just not
we're
comparable at all.
We live in basic isolation geographically, and the neighbors to our north and our south are our allies. And so we don't live in yes, we have major immigration challenges, and we have a lot of that. We have a lot of things going on with that regard, but we are not fighting for our survival. And even though some extremists in our country would say we are, because we poison the blood by bringing immigrants into that, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. But I will say that in Israel, they've always been dealing with neighbors who are not so friendly. And if you listen to President Biden's speech, which I thought was really powerful and a really strong ally leader, he said something, and that's what we'll close with tonight for the Q&A. He said, when he was meeting with Golda Meir, who's a junior senator from Delaware, and he said that he went to take a picture with her, and he said to her, how, you know, Madam Prime Minister, how do you manage to do all the things we do? And she leaned over to him and she said, well, we have a secret weapon. And he said, what is it? And she said, we don't have anywhere else to go. Think about that, right? We don't have anywhere else to go. Yes, we live here in the United States. Jews live all over the world, but many other religious communities have many countries that they could find themselves and avail themselves of, and we don't. And so this war is not about the injustices that we've been wrestling with over the past decades. This is literally the difference of being wiped out or surviving. And I think that people are waking up to it. We've been advocating it for many years because we've been in it. And many people, and many Jews, in fact, have been apathetic to it, or they've been resistant to it. But now we're seeing it in real time. This is not a joke. And so I'm hopeful that all of you who come here because you want to be with community, that you can see, we're not asking you to remove your disdain for the Israeli government. I have it too. We're not asking you to to create some sort of, you know, newfound Zionistic reality. We're saying that our global Jewish community has been incredibly pained and impacted, and we as guarantors stand in readiness to support and to love with all of our perfect imperfections and all of our differences. We have the ability to say, we're here. What does it take to say we're here? Not much. And so we're going to be calling on each and every one of you in the weeks and months ahead to say, how can we be supportive? And we're so happy that you are here. So we're going to, in a moment, we're going to ask you to rise. We're going to share, Rabbi Bernstein is going to share the prayer for the state of Israel. And then we're going to share a prayer that was handed out to you. And we're going to find each other. We're going to put our arms around each other. And we're going to sing out Oseh Shalom, with the hope that our community in some way finds its unity and peace. And we're going to have that opportunity together. So I'm going to ask you to rise.
אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו, ברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו. הגן עליה בעברת חסדך, ופרוס עליה סוכת שלומך, ושלח אורך ואמיתך לראשיה, שריה ויועציה, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך, ונתת שלום בארץ, ושמחת עולם ליושביה, ונאמר, Amen. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. And we say together, Amen.
For those of you here on your screens, those of you holding sheets, those online can see our blessing. And we invite you to share in these words that were crafted by a friend and colleague, Rabbi Menachem Creditor. And he entitled it, A Prayer for a Traumatized Jewish Heart. So let's join together. Oh God, our eyes, our hearts, our children, our mothers, our elders, our parents, our teachers, our children, our warriors, our peacekeepers, our very souls. It is more than we can bear, and it only gets worse with every photo and every video. God, protect our children from the images emblazoned now in our eyes and minds, from the worst nightmare to ever befall the Jewish people, our enemy, the face of real evil, seek to destroy our family, body, and soul. We must be like steel. We must be like iron, but we must never lose our warm and loving hearts along the way. We will fight until they are erased. From under the face of the heavens, we have no choice to have shown us what we will do if we do not. They are already perpetrating unfathomable evil, and we will force the world to bear witness as we reel with pain. God, protect our protectors, who are our children fighting for our future. Shield them as they serve, as a sword we hate to need. Hold our hearts. Let us not become hard like stone as we do what we must to save our lives. Amen. Find someone near you as we come together, and I want to thank Andy for leading us so beautifully. Oh, say shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Hoping that we can hold each other in strength and in spirit, I'll stay for a few minutes if you have questions. We hope to see many of you here present tomorrow evening, 6:15 or 8:30, to join this community, bringing song, bringing spirit, bringing prayer into our hearts. Thank you so much for joining us.